Beginning. The day the sky fell. The sky over Teryth was not blue. It shimmered in fractured shades of violet and molten gold, like a wound that refused to close. For centuries, the twin suns of her world had bathed the crystalline forests in soft radiance. Now only one burned above the horizon. The other had been swallowed by war. Commander Alari Veyth stood alone at the edge of the capital's highest spire, her silver armor reflecting the flicker of distant explosions. The air tasted like ionized metal. Smoke curled upward from the broken towers below. She did not blink. Teryth had never known defeat. Their fleets crossed galaxies. Their shields bent gravity itself. Their scholars had mapped stars that humanity still searched for with primitive telescopes. And yet, their greatest strength had always been their unity. Until he betrayed them. High Regent Kaelor had been her bond partner. On Teryth, bonds were more than love. They were neurological symphonies, minds resonating in perfect harmonic synchronization. For two beings to bond was to trust without defense. Kaelor had stood beside her during a century of service. And then he opened the gates. The enemy fleet, the Kha'ren Dominion, had not broken Teryth's shields by force. They had been invited in. Alari had learned of the betrayal too late. By the time she reached the command nexus, Kaelor was gone. Half the defense grid had already fallen. She fought anyway. She commanded the last standing fleet division. She evacuated millions. She burned supply corridors to slow the invasion. But heartbreak is heavier than gravity. When the final evacuation shuttle launched, carrying the last of the civilian children, Alari made her choice. She would stay behind. She watched Teryth burn from orbit as her own cruiser jumped to hyperspace, on autopilot. She did not remember inputting the coordinates. When she woke from stasis, the galaxy had changed. And she was alone. Middle, the human who shouldn't have survived. The planet was green, primitive, oxygen-rich, teeming with organic chaos. The sensors labeled it simply Earth. Alari remained cloaked in orbit for 3 rotations, studying. The dominant species, humans, were divided into nations. They argued. They consumed fossilized matter for energy. They launched satellites wrapped in fragile alloys. They were not ready for the wider galaxy. They were not a threat. Her cruiser's core was failing. Without Teryth's energy lattice network, she could not repair it. The quantum stabilizer was decaying. She had 2 options: drift until death, or land. She chose the latter. Her ship descended into a dense forest under cover of a meteor storm. The hull cracked on impact, but the structural shell held. She sealed the breach and activated concealment protocols. For the first time in her existence, Commander Alari Veyth stepped onto alien soil. Gravity was lighter here. The wind smelled of wet earth and pine. And she felt something unfamiliar. Silence. No shared consciousness. No background neural harmony. No bond. The emptiness was suffocating. She collapsed to one knee. Daniel Hayes was not supposed to be in those woods that night. He had driven out after another failed job interview. 32 years old. Engineering degree. Student debt. Divorced. Living in a rented cabin outside a town too small to care about his failures. He had come to the forest to think. Instead, he saw the sky tear open. The meteor storm lit up the horizon. A streak of silver crashed beyond the ridge. Daniel should have called someone. He didn't. Curiosity overpowered caution. He grabbed a flashlight and hiked toward the impact site. The crater was wrong. Too clean. Too smooth. At its center stood something that was not a rock. It pulsed. Daniel took one step closer. A blade of light formed at his throat. Identify yourself. The voice was melodic but edged with exhaustion. Daniel froze. Standing before him was a woman, if woman was the right word.
Tall.
Silver blue skin faintly luminescent. Eyes like liquid starlight. Armor fractured but elegant beyond comprehension. Okay, Daniel whispered. So, either I'm dead or you're real. She studied him. His heart rate was elevated but stable. No immediate aggression. Primitive clothing. No visible weapons. I will not harm you, she said slowly, unless required. Good, Daniel said weakly. Same. Silence stretched. Alari sensed something strange. The human's neural patterns were chaotic, but vivid. Individualistic. Self-contained. No resonance. No bond. And yet, he did not look at her with fear alone. He looked at her with concern. You're hurt, he said. That word struck harder than any weapon. No one had said that to her since Teryth fell. She swayed slightly. Energy reserves at 18%. Daniel stepped forward instinctively. Her blade flickered. I can help, he insisted. I'm an engineer. I don't know what that thing is, he gestured to the ship, but I fix things. Alari calculated probabilities. Risk, high. Alternative, certain death. She deactivated the blade. Then assist, she said. Over the next days, Daniel did the impossible. He didn't understand her technology, not fully. It defied known physics. But he understood systems. Energy flow. Structural stress. He improvised. He rewired damaged conduits using copper and salvage circuitry. He adapted a portable generator to stabilize the failing core long enough for diagnostics. Alari watched him with growing fascination. Humans lacked advanced tools, but they possessed ingenuity bordering on defiance. You should not be able to stabilize this matrix, she told him. Daniel shrugged. You'd be surprised what desperation teaches you. That word again. Desperation. She understood it intimately. At night, he brought her food. She did not require much, but he insisted. You're not a machine, he said once. You need rest. She almost laughed. I am a soldier, she replied. And soldiers aren't machines either. The simplicity of his logic disarmed her. One evening, while repairing an external hull fracture, Daniel slipped. The metal edge sliced his palm open. He hissed in pain. Alari was at his side instantly. Blood pooled bright red against silver plating. Her species did not bleed red. She placed her hand over his instinctively. Her suit scanned the wound. Minor. Non-lethal. But the sight of his vulnerability triggered something in her. A protective instinct long dormant. Why did you approach me? She asked quietly as she sealed the cut with a field patch. Daniel hesitated. I guess you looked alone. The words hit her harder than Kaelor's betrayal. Alone. Yes, she whispered. I am. He did not ask about her world that night. He simply sat beside her beneath unfamiliar stars. The truth revealed. Weeks passed. The cruiser stabilized but could not achieve interstellar jump capability without a replacement core. Alari knew what that meant. She was stranded. On Earth. With a human. She began teaching him. Not weapons. But stars. She showed him holographic projections of distant galaxies. Nebulae shaped like wings. Civilizations older than Earth's recorded history. Daniel listened like a child, hearing myth for the first time. You had all that, he said softly. And you lost it. Yes. She told him about Teryth, about the twin sons, about the betrayal. She did not speak Kaelor's name. Daniel didn't offer empty comfort. He simply said, That's not your fault. Her jaw tightened. I was commander. And you saved who you could, he replied. That matters. No one had framed it that way before. On Teryth, survival was expected. Failure was absolute. Humans measured worth differently. One night, alarms blared through the cruiser. Unidentified vessel entering orbit. Alari's expression turned cold. They had traced her. Daniel saw the shift instantly. You know them? Yes. Bad. Yes. The Kha'ren scout descended, scanning. If they detected the cruiser, Earth would become collateral damage. Alari prepared for combat. Daniel grabbed her arm. You fight them. You expose yourself. If I do not, they locate this planet. And then what? She had no answer. Daniel looked at the ship's unstable core readings. An idea formed. It's a long shot, he muttered. But humans are good at those. They worked together at frantic speed. Using the damaged core, Daniel modified the emission pattern into a false signature, a phantom energy burst mimicking a Terythian evacuation beacon. Projected far from Earth. Alari synchronized the frequency manually, her hand steady despite racing memory. The Kha'ren ship shifted trajectory. They took the bait. Daniel exhaled sharply as the scout warped away. You just saved a planet, Alari said quietly. He gave a shaky laugh. Guess I finally fixed something that matters. She looked at him differently then. Not as a primitive. Not as a liability. But as an equal. And beginning again. Months later, the cruiser's long-range systems reactivated fully. A faint signal pulsed through deep space. Survivors. Terythian survivors. Scattered but alive. Coordinates flickered on the display. A gathering point. Alari's chest tightened. Her people needed leadership. She could rebuild. Daniel stood beside her as the data streamed. So, he said carefully, you're going. It wasn't a question. Yes. He nodded. Good. They need you. And you, she asked. He smiled faintly. Earth still needs me. Even if it doesn't know it. Silence lingered. She stepped closer. On Teryth, bonds required neural synchronization. Shared consciousness. Perfect harmony. With Daniel, there was no such link. No psychic merging. Just two separate beings choosing to stand beside each other. And somehow, it felt stronger. You helped me begin again, she said. You did the same for me. She extended her hand. He took it. For a moment, the vastness between stars felt smaller. I will return, she promised. I'll hold you to that. The cruiser ascended at dawn. Daniel watched until it vanished into sunlight. He didn't feel abandoned. He felt connected. Years later, Earth detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. A fleet, not hostile. Silver vessels bearing unfamiliar insignia. At their forefront stood a command ship unlike any before it. A transmission reached global networks. A familiar voice spoke. This is Commander Alari Veyth of the Terythian Restoration Fleet. We come in peace. Earth once sheltered one of our own. We now extend alliance. Daniel stood in his cabin, older now, listening to her voice echo across the planet. A soft knock sounded at his door. He opened it. She stood there, armor replaced by ceremonial robes, eyes brighter than he remembered. Hello, Daniel. He laughed, overwhelmed. You said you'd come back. I did. Behind her, the forest rustled in the wind. Her world had ended in heartbreak. But here, on a quiet planet with flawed, stubborn humans, she had learned something her advanced civilization never mastered. Healing did not require perfection, only choice. She stepped forward. And this time, neither of them stood alone.